ridiculous.
saw the video, Austin. You saw the video.
What I saw on January 6th were people being let into the Capitol.
That's not entirely
into the
true.
Capitol.
Wait.
Oh, come on,
no,
Brian.
that's not true.
I saw the footage just like
you. Didn't see the footage of police officers being beaten? Is that what you're claiming on this show?
I didn't make the claim that I saw footage or not of officers being beaten.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today I came across a clip you absolutely need to see. Brian sits down with Austin Bratton, a young activist who openly says he wants to run for president one day, and what unfolds is one of the most uncomfortable interviews I've watched in a long time. Brian asks the simplest, most basic questions, and Austin keeps walking himself into corners he cannot escape from. There's a moment in the middle of this conversation that genuinely had my jaw on the floor. I'm not going to spoil it. You have to see it for yourself. Make sure you stick around until the very end, because the final exchange ties everything together in a way you really don't want to miss. And while you're watching, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're tuning in from. I love seeing where this channel reaches. All right, let's get into it.
Now, that is one of the powers granted to the president in the Constitution.
I didn't say he didn't have the authority, even though we can talk about how he's broken the law. He already has done that as president this go-around. It's not that he doesn't have the authority. It's that he's weaponizing this system to do so. You know that. And you know that's why he's sending the National Guard to D.C., sending the National Guard eventually to Chicago. He's talking about Baltimore, all run by mayors who look like you. You just think that's a coincidence?
No, I don't think it's a coincidence. I actually think it's a tragedy. The fact that some of the highest crime rates in these cities are being run by mayors that look like me is horrendous. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, in fact, that in the city of Chicago has one of the highest murder rates in this country. And
that's no. Hold on. That's not factually accurate. Per capita, they do not. They're not even top 50.
Well, when you look at per capita, when you look at the rate at which it affects black men and black boys and black girls per capita, it's still the highest, because I care about primarily. Brian, hold on. Primarily, I care about what happens to my race first. And when you look at the murder rates in the United States of America, we are 13% of the population, yet we make up over 51.2% of all the nation's victims, murder victims and murder perpetrators. And if you actually talk to several of the citizens that have been in D.C., I know some that I'm in a group chat with right now that they're very glad that the National Guard has come in. They've reported that crime is down. Even the mayor of D.C. admitted that crime is down due to the National Guard's presence.
Of course, crime is down because the National Guard. That doesn't mean we call in the National Guard to every single city. And by the way, they're going to leave eventually. I would also say I'm not talking about race. No matter what the color of your skin is, I don't want people to be the victims of crime. But what you said is not true. Chicago per capita is not anywhere near one of the most dangerous cities. Washington, D.C., nowhere near one of the most dangerous cities. And, you know, he's picking these cities that are run by Democrats. I find it very convenient not calling in the National Guard to any cities run by Republicans, while we know some of the most dangerous cities in this country per capita when it comes to violence are run by Republicans. He hasn't even talked about those cities. So you can't tell me this doesn't have anything to do with politics.
Well, no, I absolutely. Once again, I think it does have something to do with politics. If you look at the cities, when you're referencing the areas that are run by Republicans, many of these cities, many of these states rather, that have high crime rates per capita have Republican governors or Republican-leaning governors. But when you look at the individual cities, many of these are run by Democratic mayors. And Trump did also say that he would expand the National Guard to go around the entire country if necessary. And so I think that if we look at crime. Once again, going back to Chicago and D.C., the two cities you initially named, I don't necessarily see an issue with the National Guard being there if the goal is to reduce crime. As someone that has worked as a police dispatcher myself for many years, I would love to see crime rates at zero or net zero.
So you think Donald Trump wants to make America safer? Is that a fair statement?
I would absolutely say that I think he wants to make it.
Then why did he pardon a bunch of people who beat police officers on January 6th and call them patriots and hostages? If he cares about DC, let's just focus on that, and he cares about the safety of people. You know, there were at least 700 people that were convicted. Many of them pled guilty to violent crimes on January 6th. He called them patriots and hostages, which obviously they are not, and he pardoned them. Austin, how do you defend that?
You have to understand something right out of the gate here. When Brian asks Austin point blank about why certain cities are getting federal attention while others get a complete pass, Austin doesn't even try to deny the pattern. He literally calls it a tragedy. That word choice tells you everything. He sees what's happening. He understands the optics, but he still defends it. That's the part that blows my mind. And then we get to the moment where Austin says this: the city of Chicago has one of the highest murder rates in this country. And Brian calmly, instantly, fact checks him in real time. Per capita, they're not even top 50. Boom. Done. Game over. Because here's what people don't realize. Throwing out scary city names is the oldest playbook move in politics. It's been used for decades to justify sending federal forces into places that didn't actually need them. You go back and look at how federal deployments have historically happened in American cities, and the pattern is almost always the same. It's rarely about actual statistics. It's about optics, politics, and who runs the city. And this is where Austin's whole argument starts unraveling. He pivots. He starts talking about completely different statistics. He brings up things that have nothing to do with Brian's actual question. Because he can't defend the original claim, he changes the subject entirely. That's what people do when they've lost the point, but don't want to admit it. Then Brian goes for the throat. He asks Austin this: then why did he pardon a bunch of people who hurt officers and called them patriots and hostages? And let me break down why this question is so devastating. You spend years branding yourself as the Blue Party. You print bumper stickers. You wear the flags. You give the speeches. And then the moment officers get hurt defending the very building where laws are made, you let everyone responsible walk free. You don't just pardon them. You celebrate them. You call them heroes. That is not Back the Blue. That is Back the Blue only when it's politically convenient, and Austin has no answer for it. None.
Well, I remember that you said this in the debate we had, the brief debate that we had at Colorado State. Let's be clear here, and I'm saying this as a black man, by the way. Just because you plead guilty to something does not necessarily mean that you committed the act.
You saw the video, Austin. You saw the video.
What I saw on January 6th were people being let into the Capitol.
That's not entirely
into the Capitol.
Wait.
Oh, come on,
no,
Brian.
that's not true.
I saw the footage just like you.
You didn't see the footage of police officers being beaten? Is that what you're claiming on this show?
I didn't make the claim that I saw footage or not of officers being
wait.
beaten.
Hold on.
I did see.
You're a political person. You want to run for president.
Yes.
You mean to tell me on this show right now you didn't see any footage of police officers being beaten? What I have seen and what I have personally observed, and the footage that has been sent to me, I was unable to see any police officers being assaulted. What I did see was a young woman by the name of, I believe her name was Ashley Bobbitt. She was killed by a security guard at the Capitol. But that was all the footage that I saw. Now, if you have additional footage that I haven't seen, feel free to send it to me. I'll take a look. I am absolutely shocked that you're claiming that you didn't see any footage of violence towards Capitol Police. Well, let me just give you some facts. 140 officers were beaten that day. Many of them were sent to the hospital. Some of them lost fingers. Multiple officers have traumatic brain injury. Some officers had heart attacks, like Officer Fanone. Okay? Yes, you're right. Ashley Babbitt was shot. It was investigated, and it was declared that officer did not break the law in doing so. There were some people that were let in, a small minority of those people, because and by the way, we learned this on the commission, that when you have 200 to 300 people that are trying to get in somewhere where they don't belong, and you have one or two officers that have guns, they have one of two choices, and they testified about this. Either I take out my gun and I start shooting people and killing people, or I let them in. A few officers decided to let them in. It doesn't take away what they did. Defecating on Nancy Pelosi's desk, destruction of property. And again, I repeat myself, over 140 police officers were beaten. But I find it interesting, Austin, and ironic that you definitely heard about Ashley Babbitt, but somehow you didn't see any footage of any of the police officers beaten that day. You're a smart guy. I've had private conversations with you. I find it disingenuous that you're telling me you didn't see any video of any of the violence that day.
Well, you could find it disingenuous, but I can only be as authentic as I know how to be, and I can only be honest. So if I didn't see the footage, I didn't see the footage. Now, like I said, if you have it, I'll gladly take a look at it, and then my assessment will change based on the evidence.
I will send it to you.
What I want to, the Democrats on the left love focusing on January.
Oh no, the moment Austin says this, just because you plead guilty to something does not necessarily mean that you committed the act. That was the mask off, because let me tell you what that sentence really means. He's basically asking you to throw out the entire foundation of the American legal system. Plea deals, sworn confessions, signed paperwork in front of a judge, toss it all. Why? Because if you actually accept what those people admitted to in court, you cannot defend the pardons. Period. And then it gets worse. So much worse. Brian asks the most basic question imaginable. You didn't see the footage of officers being hurt? Is that what you're claiming on this show? And Austin, a guy who literally wants to run for president one day, looks into the camera and says he never saw any of it. None of the footage. None of the videos. Nothing. This is the part that completely breaks my brain, because that footage is documented public record. It's on every news network. It's in documentaries. It was played in congressional hearings, broadcast live. You cannot be a politically active adult in this country and have somehow missed all of it. You can't. And Austin doubles down. He says this, what I have personally observed and the footage that has been sent to me, I was unable to see any officers being assaulted, sent to him. Let that sink in for a second. He's only watching what gets sent to him. He's only consuming what people in his bubble pre-select for his eyeballs. That's not research. That's curated reality. And here's where Brian goes nuclear with the receipts. He drops this number. 140 officers were affected that day. That is documented public record from official congressional reporting. That is not opinion. That is not spin. It's verified history. This is what happens when you only watch one source of information. You end up on national television claiming you never saw something the entire planet has watched.
6th. Nancy Pelosi is on recording saying that January 6th was her fault. She stated that she declined National Guard being deployed to the Capitol. She said this on tape. So
let me ask you a
my
question.
question to you, Brian, is this. How much responsibility do you put on Nancy Pelosi and on the left for the failure to have the National Guard deployed to January 6th?
Who was the president that day?
That's not my question, Brian.
No. I'm answering your question. Donald Trump deployed the National Guard pretty quickly to D.C., didn't he?
On January 6th, the National Guard was not
did Donald
deployed.
Trump have the same powers that day as he had when he deployed the National Guard to D.C. a few weeks ago?
Brian, that's a red herring. That's not answering the question.
No. The point I'm trying to make to you is that Donald Trump had the authority. He didn't have to have Nancy Pelosi's authority. Okay, you're the one who's bringing that up. Donald Trump was the president of the United States. He sat on his ass for 4.5 hours. He did nothing. They begged him to put out a video. It took him 4 hours to do so. You know as well as I do that Donald Trump had the authority to do so because he just did it a few weeks ago. But you want to blame Nancy Pelosi. And let me ask you this. If Donald Trump doesn't lie, which he did and he continues to do, and say that the 2020 election was stolen, does January 6th happen?
You could make the argument that January 6th doesn't happen.
I think you could. Yeah, I think you could.
However, once again, I'm not the focus on January 6th and the focus on the 2020 election indicates that the left simply wants Trump to concede something that he refuses to concede. He would not concede it on MSNBC. He would not concede it in any interview that he's done. I don't think that I essentially think you're beating a dead horse and barking up the wrong tree if you think that you're going to get a man with the ego the size of President Trump's to argue or agree that he lost the 2020 election. I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think that's going to happen either. I agree with you, but I'm mesmerized that you can't call him out for it. He's the only president in American history that refuses to do so. Let's talk about president, though, Austin. If you're just joining us, by the way, Austin Bratton, public speaker, activist. I met him at Colorado State. He is a Donald Trump supporter. Let's talk about what's happening right now in this country. Sure. Are you comfortable with someone who doesn't have the proper paperwork, that has lived in this country for decades, that has been sent without due process to prisons like El Salvador prisons and others where people are being beaten and tortured? I'm not talking about violent criminals now. Over 60% of the people that have been deported, some of those people have been sent to these prisons that are nonviolent criminals. Are you comfortable with that?
I'm not comfortable with them being sent to prisons if they're nonviolent criminals. Mm-hmm. No, I'm not comfortable with that.
And now we get the deflection, the classic, predictable, lazy deflection. Austin pulls out the Nancy Pelosi card. He asks Brian this: how much responsibility do you put on Nancy Pelosi and on the left for the failure to have the National Guard deployed? And Brian doesn't take the bait for 1 second. He hits back with the cleanest logic you'll ever hear. Who was the president that day? You have to appreciate the surgical precision here, because the entire deflection collapses with one sentence. The president has the authority to deploy the National Guard. That's not a controversial statement. That is documented constitutional power. We just saw that same authority used in Washington, D.C. weeks ago, so either the president had the power or he didn't. You can't have it both ways. And then Brian delivers the line that should be on a billboard somewhere. He says this. He sat there doing nothing for 4.5 hours. They begged him to put out a video, and historically speaking, this is exactly how leadership failures get measured. Look at any major crisis in American history, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the aftermath of Pearl Harbor, even the response to the 1968 unrest. Leaders are judged on how fast they respond when the country is in chaos. 4.5 hours of inaction during a national emergency is not a small detail. That is a defining moment. But the real knockout, the one I keep replaying in my head, is when Brian asks the question that traps Austin completely. If he doesn't keep repeating that the election was stolen, does that day even happen? And Austin, to his credit for being honest, says this: "You could make the argument that it doesn't happen. I think you could. Yeah, I think you could." There it is. He just admitted it. The whole thing. The chaos, the deflection, the pardons, the cover-ups, all of it traces back to one source, one man refusing to accept reality. Even Austin, a supporter, cannot deny it when pressed. And the segment ends on Austin admitting he's not comfortable with nonviolent people being sent to foreign facilities without due process. That admission alone tells you he knows something is off, he just won't say it loud enough. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.